days, and I managed to crack a rib on a woody down in Louisville. And as you well know, the thing was well worth it. And I also would like to say, if anyone knows who designs the suits for Vietnam, please thank them for me. Because I'm now 71 years old and I worry about my back, and those suits on the Vietnam are fantastic. Okay, anyone know what happened on June the 18th, 1960? 61,500 people showed up for the opening of Freedom Land USA in New York because Cornelius Vanderbilt Wood had oversold the park and they had to close the gates at 2 o'clock that day. It was a PR disaster. So that's probably when parks decided they needed to have soft openings. Kings Island had a soft opening. If I remember my numbers right from 50 years ago, please don't quote me, I'm remembering this, I think we had 4,000 people. If you didn't walk through that gate as a couple, you probably didn't see anyone else the rest of the day. It was a cold, miserable, misty day. The type of cold that goes right through your bones. And I remember our ride supervisor saying, well, I guess we're open. And I just wanted to shout, dude, how can you not be excited about this? So we took the first train out, and we had 6 crew members and 4 passengers on the first run. Not very economic. But we should have been happy about that cold mist because 4 hours later, it turned into a downpour. So Kings Island had one of the smallest and shortest openings in history. But we consoled ourselves and said, well, these are just preview weekends. We know we'll be better in June when we go full time. And we were. We averaged 8,000 people. I think they told us we had to have 11,000 just to break even, and we were averaging 8,000. And the people downtown were just getting a little bit nervous. There were nights I would sit on the locomotive at the station and not see one guest walk through Rivertown for an hour. It was that bad. But something happened on July 4th. The track used to run along the front fence, and when we came back to the park, we could see way off in this distance the thing they call the parking lot. And that morning, the parking lot seemed closer. But it kept getting closer and closer and closer until there were cars parking on grass that had never seen cars before. And that night, at 9 o'clock, we were still running a full train. The deal back then was, on weekends, on Saturdays, and on holidays, we would close at 11 o'clock. Not just the gate, but the actual rides. And at 11:15 that night, they made an announcement and said, ladies and gentlemen, due to the excellent crowds, tonight Kings Island will stay open until midnight. And there was this huge crowd roar across the park. But what you were really hearing were the people downtown going, woo, we dodged a bullet there. Well, we got to midnight, and guess what happened? They made another announcement and said, ladies and gentlemen, we'll stay open until 1 a.m. And we did. We did. I got out of there about 2 o'clock in the morning that day. And as you may know, the rest is history because we were the first regional park to ever get 2 million people in 1 year. And you gotta think about what the park was back then. Disneyland and Kings Island were the same size when they opened, 69 acres. But Walt Disney ran his train around the park, whereas here we dedicated 22 acres to just the train, plus 8 acres for this picnic ground. So Kings Island was effectively about 40 acres. So it was a very, very small park, and we were the first to hit 2 million in 1 year in our very first year. So I'm very, very proud of this place. I still am. Let's talk about the steam train for a moment. Back in the 1950s, there was a guy that owned a company that made pot scrubbers, the things you used to scrub your skillet with. And he bought a little taggy locomotive out of an amusement park, and he restored it and got it running. And another fellow came along and said, could you build one of those for me? Well, the bottom line is, 30 years later, he and his son had built 109 locomotives and around 500 cars. That's a pretty good family hobby. Out of those 109, over 100 of them were working steam engines, but a few were diesels. 2 of the diesels went to Canada's Wonderland where they were never even used. Steve Ellery didn't build their Frontier Canada area for almost 20 years, so those trains never got used out there. Out of the 100 engines that are steam, 21 of them were the size of Kings Island. The rest are smaller ones, like you see the Chance Morgan trains and most small parks. but 21 of them were the size of King's Islands. One of those went to Germany, where it's still running. One of them went to Kuwait, where it disappeared during the First Gulf War, and we think that Saddam's troops stole it and took it to Baghdad as president for Saddam Hussein, but we don't know because we can't find it. And there was a third one that was bought secondhand by a guy by the name of Michael Jackson for his Neverland Ranch. Now, there's one thing I want to clear up about our trains. They are not scale models, even though they'll tell you. Back in the 1870s, there was a thing going around the country called narrow gauge fever. Small towns were building smaller trains that ran on 3-foot wide track instead of 4-1/2-inch wide track. It was just an economical thing to do that. You could run on smaller trestles and tighter curves. So our trains are actually what you call full-size narrow gauge. In the 1870s, Cincinnati was known as the narrow gauge capital of the world because we had 5 narrow gauge railroads, and we hosted the National Narrow Gauge Convention twice. The first train that ran from Cincinnati to Mason over here was pulled by a locomotive that was exactly the same size as our trains. So they are full-size trains. The only difference in technology is they're welded together instead of riveted. They burn propane for obvious reasons, and they have air brakes, which were not invented until 1869. But the trains weigh about 110 tons fully loaded, so it's kind of nice to have brakes coming around the hill. When we opened the ride, we had a PA system on the station platform to tell people what they would see later in the year, because it was just a mud hole back there. It was a lousy spring, and they were way behind getting things in, and there was no information whatsoever. But they had 2 bare settler cabins built out there. One Saturday morning during the weekends, we managed to come by with the cabins, and suddenly there were mannequins in front of those cabins. Naked mannequins. Naked mannequins that someone had painted on details. And it didn't take too long before we started hearing about it from parents. So they sent this little redhead kid out there with a bunch of sheets and safety pins. And as we came by, he had them all covered up, except he didn't have the pins in quite yet. And the wind came up, and that was the first live entertainment on the train. As time went on, we had a Shawnee Land. It was a 10-person canoe back behind us there. And you had 2 people who were rowing and giving the spiel, and you had 8 people who were the passengers. And they used to start by saying, "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the most boring ride in the park." If you look to your left, you would have seen the Indian village, except that our general manager and McHale moved to the train ride. So they got bored and came over and robbed us one day and got in trouble for it. But it went over so well that the park decided to hire actors. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of stories, because quite honestly, the way we portrayed Native Americans back then wasn't all that good. But we did have one guy that called himself Running Bear, B-A-R-E, and he was great at vaudeville type stuff. He was slapstick all the way. We had people coming back 3 or 4 times to ride the train just because of Running Bear. In the second year, we had people that robbed the train. And occasionally, to give the actors a break, our assistant general manager, Denny Stegel, who you may have heard of, he now has International Empire Services, he would dress up the front office staff, and he'd come out and he would give the actors a break. Well, one day we got wind of that, and I stopped back at the water park that is there today, and I told the crowd what was going on, and when we got to Denny, he came running out and said, "Stop the train, and the train went right on by. And 400 people waved and said, "Hi, Mr. Spiegel." It was 30 years before I got to see Denny again and tell him who did that to him. And then there's one personal one that I've got to tell you about. They used to have a girl by the name of Miss Jessica. She was a down east girl going out west and started in life, and she was riding the train. And when the bandits got a hold of her, they would grab her and throw her over their shoulder and carry her into the cabin. And I said, "I got the wrong job." Well, one of the gals who played that part was one of the prettiest gals I've ever met in my life. They had her dressed up in this horrible calico outfit that she hated and everyone else hated, and they used to tease her about it. And one day, she was getting a little irritated with that, so good nerdy kid, here, I'm going to make some points for this lady. And I walked over and I said, Susan, don't you listen to these people. I think you look just fine without that dress. 5 years later, I was driving down the interstate late at night, half asleep, and all of a sudden the radio blares out, tonight, Miss Susan Perkins of Middletown, Ohio was named Miss America. So I don't always say I make a total fool of myself for Miss America. If you have kids or grandkids, encourage them to work in the music department. Because this was the best summer of my life up here in 72. I can tell you that this is the place I went from being a boy to a man. I was a young kid that did not like talking to people, and before the summer was over, I was talking to a lot of people. I had 5 different kinds of waves when the train would cross the platform. I had the little kid wave, I had the old folks wave, and then I had the wave for that kid that said, I'm a teenager and I'm too cool to wave back at you. And I just love working with people. The second thing was, the girls never paid any attention to me. I was 6'3" and 130 pounds and skinny as a rail with big ears. But when I put on those overalls, it was like putting on the Superman outfit, and something changed that summer. And I had one girl on the ride who used to grab my lunch and run ahead to the break area and set up my food for me ahead of time. And I had another that people tried to encourage me to ask out, and I wish I had now because she was a member of one of the most prominent families in Cincinnati. But the thing that really changed me that year is one that's hard to share. I was in my dream job. I was loving what I was doing. It's what I'd always dreamed of all my life. And I was in the engine house one day polishing brass in the locomotive, and I saw Don Palmer, who was our head of operations, and his assistant Bill Reed coming down the track. And I wondered what they were up to. They walked into the engine house and they said, grab your lunchbox and follow us. And they walked me out of the park. And my dream job was over. Because Don was a little bit on the brash side, and I didn't get along with him, and I've been talking behind his back, even though I've been warned about that, I did it anyway. And I had been fired from my dream job. And I had an hour drive back to Dayton, with tears in my eyes, trying to figure out how I was going to explain it to my parents. Well, they weren't home, and while I was sitting in the backyard trying to figure it out, the phone rang, and it was Don, and he was not nice. He just said, be in my office at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. When I got there, Bill Reed was there, Don was there, Lou Brown, our engineer for the railroad, was there, grandfather was a 65-year-old guy. And Bill said, Lou came to us and said, you were the best worker we've ever had. He wants you back. How can we work that out? And by 9 o'clock, I was back on the engines and standing everything up in the car. Sadly, I learned not too many years ago that Don Palmer had died at a young age, and one of my great regrets in life is that I never got to write to him. Thank you for firing me that day, because it was one of the best lessons I ever had. Today, I sit on the State of Ohio Board of Trustees for the Methodist Church. I've been on the Chamber of Commerce. Up until I retired, I talked to 8,000 people on a regular basis. None of that would have ever happened without Koontz Island. This place gave me a life. It turned me from a boy to a man. And I am proud of this place to this day. Thank you. How's lunch? Chef, where are you, Chef? I saw you. There you are. So, everybody give Chef a round of applause. Hey, welcome, Coasterstock. Good to see you again. It's been a while, and it's always one of my favorite days to see all of you here. With the common theme, you guys love Koontz Island, right? All right. if you don't know, this is our 50th anniversary, right? And, this is a special year. How many of you were here on April 29th? Okay, a lot of you. All right, that was such a special day, not only for me, but for a lot of our former general managers, retirees, etc. That was such a memorable day for me to be part of that. So, and we've got a lot more in store this year, starting next weekend, Memorial Day weekend. And I'm sure you've seen the social media, the announcement about fun, fireworks, and 50. Have you seen that yet? You've seen it. I'm telling you, you don't want to miss it. I already know they're still working on it. They're still working on programming all the lights, the sound. We have a special guest that night, Mr. Barry Williams, aka Greg Brady. He and I have something in common. Can anybody guess what Greg Brady or Barry Williams and I have in common? What? I don't have curly hair. Same age? No, he's actually 3 years older than me. He's 67. Anybody have another guess? Yeah, he's been to Koontz Island. Okay, we both have gray hair. Okay? We both have gray hair. That's what he and I have in common. I've never run around the park looking for plants. Usually, the maintenance guys, they bring the plants to me, so I don't have to go hunt for them. But I have ridden the racer, so we have that in common as well. So, again, I just can't say how good it is to see everyone. Where's Brandon Mason? Is Brandon here? Is Brandon here? Okay, so you guys, some of you submitted questions for me to answer. Brandon didn't have a question, but I loved his post. I'll read it to you. See if I can find it real quick. Maybe Don's got it. Here it is. I love Brandon's post. Mr. Koontz is an amazing person. Thank you for all you do for the patrons. Thank you, Brandon, for posting that. I appreciate that very much, even though it's not here. But speaking of questions, I'm sure all of you are dying to hear what I have to say about some of the questions that you asked, right? All right. So the first question is from Grant Pleasant Sr. When will Diamondback receive a new paint job? So as you know, we painted a lot of rides this year. Starting last fall, finishing up this year, we painted Eiffel Tower, Racer, we painted Rock Tower, we painted Flying Ace. What else did we paint? We painted Backlot. We painted Adventure Express. So my goal, again, I have goals. It costs a lot of money to paint rides. So my goal is that Diamondback will get a paint job next year. Okay?
All right, my next question from Haley. She wants to know, Mr. Koontz, have you ever ridden a racer together with Don Hobbit, that is me? And how was that experience? If not, what do we need to do to make that happen?
I saw that question and I asked Don, have we? Have we? And he said, I don't think so. And that's...
Mike, GM, has not ridden the race with me. Beforehand, Greg Scheid, GM, did not ride the race with me. I think GMs don't like PR people.
All right, Don, we'll make a date. Either today or tomorrow. Either today or tomorrow. All right? Okay, which seat?
Next question. Who's flying all the drones at the new fireworks show?
Yeah, I mentioned the drone fireworks in the 50s, so it's a show. If you've been here for our nighttime fireworks show, it's pretty incredible. The lights on Ice Street, the fountain. But this year we're adding a lot more lights. Still have fireworks, but this year we'll have 200 drones in the air as well. So if you're standing at the front of International Street, looking at the tower, the fireworks on the left, as always, the drones will be on the right-hand side. And the drones are owned by Rossi Fireworks. So the same company that does our fireworks will be doing the drones. Okay?
Question from Michael. Is Boom Blast ever going to be overhauled or replaced? It hasn't changed much in all the 10 years since its conversion from Scooby-Doo and showing its age.
Kind of like Diamondback, I personally, I want Boom Blasters to be upgraded. Okay? So it's on my list. I have a lot of things on my list. But I agree, Boom Blasters needs to be enhanced, maybe rethemed, something new and different, better technology. So, has anybody been ridden Toy Story and Disney? You love it, right? I love it too. So, I'd love to do something like that. Would be my thought. But again, we have corporate partners, planning and design, and I wish I could make all the decisions myself. But I have a boss, and he has a boss, and they have a boss, and so but yes, definitely, hopefully in the next years, we'll redo Boom Blasters.
John would like to know if we could bring back one defunct attraction from Kings Island's past 49 years, what would it be?
Let's see. When I was a lot younger, and when I visited the park back in the 70s and 80s, one of the rides I really enjoyed because it was so unique, so different, as a coaster, is if I got a guess. What?
That's the only reason that would make sense.
What?
But they just sandblasted and repainted. It's because somebody
King Cobra.
reshared the
I would bring, if I could, I'd bring King Cobra back.
But Cedar Fair is often,
Taylor would like to know, are you planning on keeping the Temple of Concert series as a permanent thing in season, or is it just for 2022?
A lot of celebrating the 50th anniversary was, in some ways it's about nostalgia. It's about things of the past, but also things of the present, and hopefully for the future. And one of the things that made Kings Island so special back in the 80s and 90s were concerts. And our live entertainment team does a great job with all the shows and think about Carnival and Winterfest and so forth. This year we're going to have a lot of great entertainment. But when we were planning the 50th, one of the things that we said we've got to do is bring back concerts to Timberwolf. Okay?
It's more like a shopping center.
And this year we're learning about the concert business. It's an interesting business, and a lot of concert venues this year are reopening. You know, post-COVID. So there's a lot of competition.
I walked right into
I think some of the the work we've done with Timberwolf to have a separate entrance, to Timberwolf for those people who don't want to come into the amusement park, they just want to come to the concert. I can imagine why. They just want to go to the concert, right? But this year's a test. If this year is successful, so success means people have to buy tickets to the concert, okay? We've had Spirit Song in the past. I know there was a question about Spirit Song. One of the things we wanted to make sure we did this year was have a Christian band, Christian night. So we've got Skillet and Jordan St. Cyr. Skills have been very popular with Spirit Song in the past. Jordan St. Cyr is an up-and-coming artist. He's phenomenal, by the way. So, if we do concerts next year, it depends upon how successful they are this year. My desire is to have them again next year. That's what I want to do.
All right, last question comes from Dan. With all the great breweries in and near King Zion, are there any plans to have a beer, wine, distillery event in the future, such as we've seen around the music park industry? We have the International Food Event, maybe a beer event coming up.
In the past 2-3 years, especially, we partnered with Sonder Brewing here in Cincinnati. Small craft brewery that's brought you Big Lager, they brought you Blue Ice Cream Ale. Those will be back this summer. We're also partnering with Platform Beer,
we're not going to do it, but he might want to see it.
Who's sponsoring our Timberwolf concert series. And focus for us is to provide new experiences outside of rides. Our focus is on providing those experiences like Carnival,
technically,
like
the only Vice President
food festival, wine, beer festival type format. So again, we have a lot of great partners in our corporate office, in our food and beverage.
More or less the duties of the past president are to assist the new models in transitioning and guidance.
It's important to our guests, especially we saw,
to be honest,
how much people like
75% of the presidents
some of the craft beers that are going,
participating in providing feedback.
drinks that we do for
So you can know, well, what was wrong.
So
Why isn't this
definitely something that we should do. Let's see. I'm good right now. Okay.
People always wanted to go to Seabreeze. It's like they always had these really tough restrictions for having an event. We finally were able to team up with Western New York.
Somebody asked, I'm going to ask you a question. Excuse me. Somebody asked if I could still ride from any other park in the country, which park would it be? Must be my allergies. So I thought, when I saw that question, I thought about it, and it's kind of like, if we had the room, I would take all the top 5 wooden coasters and steel coasters from every park and put them here. That's my answer. But I'm going to ask you, what would you say?
Velocicoaster. Coaster. Velocicoaster.
Velocicoaster, okay. Flying Eagles. Yeah, my answer to that, and I'll tell you the story. A couple of years ago, Coantz was remodeling, one of their areas of the park, and Flying Eagles was, off to the side, so I called Pat Jones, who is the GM of Carowinds, and I said, I'm going to drive a truck down, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to load Flying Eagles up and bring them back home. And she told me she would have me arrested on site. So, anyway. Hey, there's a lot of great rides out there in the industry. We have a lot of great rides. Definitely, we're always looking for a ride that's going to meet our guest expectations. It's going to be fun, thrilling, have broad appeal for the coaster enthusiasts and the young coaster enthusiasts as well. So we're always looking for that type of ride. It's like, none of the questions was, what are you going to do in the crypt? Don's saying, why did you bring that up? It's obvious. I mean, kind of like boot blasters. Something needs to go in the crypt. I believe that. I want that to happen someday. Okay? We're spinning. I know Manny's around here somewhere. There he is. Maybe spinning, maybe someday we'll have a madhouse in there. Does that work? Okay. All right.